Today, on this segment of Perspectives of Veterinary Medicine, I am honored to have one of my teachers and mentors. I say that in the present tense because he is still helping me as I learn to make my way through life. I could easily take the next 5 minutes going through his degrees and awards and honors, but I would rather introduce him as to what he imparted to me that he is. During college, I and many other students left home and we had to figure out how to live on our own and become our own person. My guest today, besides teaching us the academics, was an example for us to be a good person. For those of us that are Christians, to be a Christian in a professional world. The example he provided with his actions gave everyone a blueprint about how to be professionals in the veterinary field, as well as professionals as Christians. He taught us to care for our patients and our family and our neighbors just as he demonstrated. In a world where sensationalism gets too much attention, this man is tireless in his commitment and giving to others. I know that has inspired my faith and my work ethic throughout my career. While everyone in the veterinary field in Kentucky will know him as Dr. P, for the rest of my viewers, I'm happy to introduce Dr. Phil Prater. I've got Dr. Prater here with me now. I'm very happy to have him. I've considered him a mentor for years. Dr. Prater, what got you into vet medicine? How did you get to this place where you have influenced so many students, both vet techs and veterinarians?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Nathan, for having me. I really, when I think of, I love all my students, I really do. But I had a very wonderful veterinary friend of mine who was also in academia. Told me one time, he said, your students should be a reflection of the love and effort that you put into them. And so when I see you, I see a good reflection of I'm proud of many of my students, and I'm exceptionally proud of you and what you've done and how you handled yourself in school. So I was born in Paris, Kentucky, in Bourbon County, and I wasn't raised on a farm, but it was a very agricultural community. So really, the only jobs there wasn't, there wasn't McDonald's and Walmart and all those things. It was throwing square bale. There weren't roll bales, so you're throwing square bale hay and working in tobacco patch and working on farms. It was your summer jobs. And I had a horse. I had a dog and a cat, and I enjoyed all my pets and stuff. But I had an opportunity. I was trying to play football, and I got beat up pretty good. And I thought, man, I'm probably I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this or not. And there was a job that just came open out of the blue. My dad had heard about it. And one of his partners in his business had said, hey, they got this opening. They're looking for kids to come after school and help this equine veterinarian in surgery. So they told me about it, and I said, yeah, I'll give that a try. Veterinary, it wasn't like I was, all the time you hear in pre-vet students, oh, well, I wanted to be a vet since I was 4 years old and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I have a 3-year-old granddaughter, and she loves animals, but she's not prepared for veterinary school. So I said, well, sure, I'll give it a shot. And I'm telling you, Nathan, I was there a month and I was like locked in. I said, oh yeah, this is for me. And it was just, it wasn't, so I'm dealing with, because you hear so much this day about, well, I love animals. I love little fur babies. I want to help little fur babies and pretty horses and all that stuff. Let me tell you something. The first animals I dealt with as a pre-veterinary student, growing up, were 3-year-old thoroughbred colts off the racetrack that wanted to eat my lunch.
Yeah.
I did not love them.
Yeah.
I admired them. I respected them, but they basically wanted to, they're out on the track exercising. Now you lock them up in a stall because they have a chip fracture in their carcass.
Yeah.
They wanted to eat. They wanted to kill you.
Yeah.
So yeah. I didn't have like fur babies. I had animals that wanted to kill me. But taking them in that surgery, this is Dr. Bob Copeland, who's still alive. He's a wonderful man. He is the pioneer of equine orthopedic surgery. And I'm telling you, I just learned so much from him, just how to be a professional. And he still to this day has wonderful insight into horses. And I just locked in. I
Yeah.
thought it's the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah.
And I would go there every afternoon. He would operate he'd start, he'd go do his calls and stuff at Keeneland and Churchill Downs in the mornings. And then he'd be back in Paris in the afternoon and we'd be prepping. I mean, I knew more about a carpal bone when I was a senior in high school than most vet students.
Oh, yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I didn't know anything else.
Yeah.
I didn't know what a foal was or a mare,
Well,
but I
that was
knew
one
oh, there's a chip, yeah, on the third carpal bone.
that was
So,
one thing I really enjoyed about going through the tech program was I felt going into vet school I had a much more
right,
hands-on knowledge base,
right,
and that
right.
definitely helped me up till now, even, daily. I
Yeah.
enjoy the hands-on of it. So,
I mean, I'd hardly handled the dog by the time I got into vet school, but I could handle a ranked 2-year-old colt.
yeah, and that,
So that was, I mean, that's the light bulb for me. When
yeah.
I was there for about 30 days and I thought, oh yeah, this is, and my dad, and he was a good, he was not an ambulance chasing whatever. I mean, he
Mhm.
was a good attorney. My dad was a lawyer, and I think he had it somewhere in the back of his mind. Well, we're going to get Phil to law school, and get him to come back and take over the practice. And I went to court with him one day. They had one of those little father son days, and
Mhm.
so I go to, it was probably about 6 or 8 months before I started working for the vet, and
Yeah.
I went to court with him and he was arguing some, boring, really, boring case. And I thought, oh Lord, not for me. I love you, Pop. I appreciate you. You give me everything in the world. You give me everything I need and a lot of what I wanted. But I can't do this.
And my
So,
wife works at a prosecutor's office, and I guess in vet medicine, we're used to mostly quicker results. My
yeah.
patience is
Oh,
just,
yeah.
I want to get it done and resolved.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah. It's painful. Legal professions is painful and slow. But those were I mean, my dad was my real hero.
Mhm.
He came out of the hills of Eastern Kentucky, went to Korean War just to get the GI Bill. He wasn't necessarily a, bloodthirsty killer. He just he wanted to he just got into war so he could get his college paid for.
Yeah.
And he worked his way out of Pikeville Junior College and
Mhm.
Pippa passes and then up to Alice Lloyd and all those little schools down there and in the hills out of the hollers
It-
and
we're-
got into University of Kentucky Law School and got his law degree.
well, I
So,
mean, that's an accomplishment itself. I'm
oh yeah.
sorry, I don't know if I've ever asked, are you an only child or did you have brothers
Oh,
and
I have
sisters?
a sister. Yeah,
Oh,
my sister still lives in Paris,
okay.
and she's a wonderful person, and she has a son and husband. They live over there, so
Yeah.
yeah, it was just me and her.
Okay.
But
But
uh, but they were, you know, I'll just kind of throw this in. And again, I told you before we kind of got started here, I just feel like I'm the most blessed person
hmm yeah.
that's ever lived. And part of that is, having solid family, uh,
Yeah.
background, saw where my dad had come from, saw how he scratched, clawed, worked. When he passed away in 2017 at the visitation, all these lawyers, I mean,
hmm
he was a lawyer for like 56 years.
Yeah.
He
So
he
everyone knew him.
quit. Yeah, yeah. He quit his law practice in February 2017, died in October 2017. So he had all these, decades of friends, and they come through, and every one of them, without hesitation, categorically said he was the hardest working lawyer they'd ever seen.
Mm.
And he wasn't the richest, he wasn't the most flamboyant, he wasn't all
Yeah.
that stuff, but he was the hardest working one that they'd ever been around. So I think I, developed and as well as I do, if you don't have a work ethic for veterinary medicine, you
It's
better you need to find something else.
yeah.
And I think he instilled that
Yeah.
just hard work. Hard work will pay off. And I guess it clicked. I
It,
worked for Doc Copeland. Yeah, I worked for Doc Copeland all through high school and
okay.
just learned so much. And then did a stint when I got into college and undergraduate. And of course, Dr. Copeland was an Ohio State grad, so he was very influential in trying to and wanted me to go up there as opposed to other vet schools.
Where'd you go to
And
undergrad?
at OSU.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
okay. Okay.
yeah. So I was really, again, really blessed. My folks said, "Look, we've saved money. We're our dream was to get you through undergraduate." And so they helped a lot. I worked, summers and saved money and had a job up in Columbus, but they helped me a lot in undergrad. And then vet school was on me.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna tell your audience what I paid to go to vet school because they'll hate me.
Yeah, even what I paid is getting rather
You're right. That's right.
it's
That's
kind
right.
of
You kind of
scary.
looked at the time. You probably looked at it and went, "Golly, man, this is
I was like,
terrible. These
when am I
kids
going to get this paid off? And
today."
but that's another thing I noticed there was hard work. God blessed me in a few different ways, but I was able to pay that off, and
Yeah,
I just I feel good about that.
that's
Uh,
right. That's
uh,
right. And
but
and you should. There's no doubt this is getting to be a real issue.
mm,
The 900-pound gorilla in the room is student debt. We
yeah,
all know that. We know that it's burdensome. It affects our attitude.
yeah.
It affects maybe sometimes how we practice. And I,
I
I would I would hope, God forbid, that and I don't think this really occurs to any great extent.
hmm
But I'm going to tell you, there's no way you can have a $300,000 loan and not feel pressure to do things in your practice the way you practice that when that's hanging on your head all the time.
yeah, and I think
Mhm.
it's hard working in a little bit more rural area. I
Yeah.
sometimes question there is the gold standard, which obviously makes me more money,
Right.
but is not always realistic for some of the people
Yeah.
that are my clients, which,
You're not in Westchester County outside of Philadelphia,
yeah,
where everybody just says, "Yeah, sure. Here's the credit card, do whatever." I mean, you're not in that situation. I wasn't and when I went back to practice in Paris, I didn't have big thoroughbred clients and stuff. I did a mixed animal practice. I
yeah,
did small animal, I did a lot of cattle work,
yeah,
probably, which was kind of surprising to me that I really took off and did a lot of cattle work and that's really been my mainstay for the last half of my career. I haven't really had a chance to talk to a lot of vet school faculty,
hmm
but I currently do some consulting with one of the vet schools that have a distributive model and where they're having kids go out and they kind
yeah,
of get their senior year hands-on training with with people like you
yeah,
and you've had some students that I've had. And sometimes when I read in their reflection, so they're required to reflect every week and
yeah,
talk about cases, and they have to write soaps and all those kind of things. They turn them into me. I kind of grade them,
yeah,
but some of the things I'm seeing in there, and it's not just at this school; it's in all of them. There is such a emphasis on you can only do it this way, this optimal way,
yes,
and or euthanize them.
yeah,
And I'm going, wow, really? I mean,
uh,
because in my practice, I'm sure as in your rural practice,
yeah.
we had plan A, we had plan B.
I kept going through
We,
the alphabet usually.
yeah, we
Um,
go down to about D, and
I,
then go, well, okay, if you can't do that, maybe we'll have to put the animal down. But I always gave people options. I'm going, look, let's,
yeah,
we got a little chance here.
I would
And,
add one other thing to your specialist. That's an answer I get a lot. We want to
yeah,
send it to a specialist now.
right.
They've already expressed they don't want to or can't afford it, so what do you do
That's
now?
right.
And
That's right.
it's fun watching the students figure that out
Mhm.
especially when it's the first time they've been put in that situation. And like, what do you mean? We were told to give them this treatment,
Yeah,
and I'm like, well, you have to come up with something else now.
that's right. That's right.
And and then
It's
they
not
get
just
really,
you can't float it off to a, you can't float it off. Maybe if you're in downtown Cincinnati, you can, and the
yeah,
specialist is 3 blocks over, maybe.
yeah,
But if you're in, if you're in West Liberty, Kentucky, and there's not a specialist for 200 miles, well, you're gonna have to. Uh, and I kind of thought about this when you and I talked earlier about doing this. I
hmm
kind of thought about some things that I saw in my mentors, and
yeah,
and then kind of instilled in my excuse me in myself a little bit, as opposed to what maybe we're seeing today.
yeah, yeah,
But hey, the technology is incredible today.
yes,
The clinical pathology things that you can do is incredibly advanced. I think intellectually, veterinarians probably are. Well, I'm not going to throw you in, but I'll throw me in. I mean, there's a lot of vets that are way smarter than I am. But here's the deal. Here's what I see that's lacking. When you have all the tools and you have all the blood work and you have all the toys and all the diagnostics and stuff like that, then everything just gets to be an algorithm.
yes,
You plug it in and it comes out hyperthyroidism,
hmm
or you run 16 things on blood work and it's Cushing's, or whatever. Um, I saw veterinarians who didn't have all that stuff,
yeah,
and I will tell you what they had though. They were creative.
hmm
They were the most creative people. And if creativity is a part of intelligence, which I would hope it would be,
yeah, yeah,
they were the most intelligent people I ever saw.
yeah,
They didn't have all this help. They didn't have Doc Copeland I worked for. He didn't have 14 university studies on the best route approach to the carpal
yeah.
joint.
He
He
figured
did
out
it.
how to do it.
He just figured it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And the mixed animal practitioners, they didn't have all the stuff. They had little bottles sometimes of stuff that they would mix up that
yeah,
worked and slap their own label on it. And you
yeah.
know what? It worked. It was
It worked.
good. It was safe. It was effective because they didn't have all this. I
I,
didn't have. I mean, I didn't have Banamine. Like
yeah.
how do you? Yeah, right.
How do you? I don't know how to think without Banamine.
Yeah, right. Well, guess what? There were steroids.
Yeah.
You
Well,
did
yeah,
that.
that's what when we're going back to the students, because every time, or not every time, but a lot of the times we get to, okay, what do you do now? They don't, this is not an option for them. You've got to come up with something. And they're like, I don't know, I don't know. And then I'm like, well, let's give it steroids. And everyone from school freaks out. And I'm
Oh
like,
yeah,
well,
yeah,
I'm not going to not do something. And, I talk
right.
to the clients about risk and benefits and stuff.
Well,
Um,
I'm sure that I'm sure there's an aspect to this that where when you have all these tools that can you provide, are we providing better medical care today
mhm.
than we did 50 years ago? Well, yeah, probably. But just kind of my perspective as a veterinarian, boy, we've lost some creative people. We're just so incredibly
Yeah,
creative and pioneering, and just they didn't know all the answers, but they were game. They
yeah,
had scrotal circumference, and
yes,
they were going, well, you know what? And the owners understood that. I mean, that's another problem
yeah.
is you don't necessarily have an owner that understands that today.
I feel
So,
like we've
you know,
lost that relationship that
yeah,
gives us the confidence to say, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to step in and do whatever I
yeah,
can. Just trust me.
right,
We may not
right.
win, but I don't have other options.
And here's the price if it doesn't work.
Uh,
I
yes,
have to cover my costs and stuff, but I just want to do this. It's
yes,
just this internal gut feeling of, by golly, I'm going to get in there and try to do this. And and if it goes great, wonderful. And if it doesn't go great, we've learned something and you haven't lost a bunch of money. And I'm sorry you have your animal didn't make it, but we're going to make it anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
It wasn't like it was going to get better on its own. So give
I've
me a
told
shot.
I've told people a lot. I've learned something for the next one, and this
Yeah, you
this
betcha.
might help someone else. And I
Betcha.
do have clients that are still responsive, and they enjoy seeing the students work on things. But it's as an owner, it's always in the back of my mind, how far can I push that and stuff.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I'm concerned that I'm happy that students today are learning all these wonderful things
mhm.
in medicine and surgery and different ways of doing things. I love all that,
Yeah,
but I fear that because of that, because it's such it doesn't become a tool, it becomes a crutch.
yeah. It's an
And it
algorithm, like you said. Yeah,
Yeah, and now well, I can't be creative
yeah.
because my list of all these things over here are telling me to go this way. I don't think that's it, but I don't really want to go the other way.
Yeah. And to me, that's the fun part of vet medicine is
Yeah.
there's freedom to try to figure out
Right.
what's wrong, and that's the fun part. I mean,
Right.
yeah, we're supposed to give vaccines. That's an algorithm. You give it whatever, at the normal puppy shots, but I can teach my tech to do that. I want to figure out the other stuff.
Yeah.
But let me go back a little bit. So you went to Ohio State for undergrad, or the Ohio State. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
And it was a contracted state with Kentucky at that time.
Oh, okay. I don't, it still isn't, is
So
it?
no, it got to be too expensive. So actually I was the very last class of Kentuckians to go through Ohio State.
Oh, okay.
Because for the state of Kentucky could send 7 students to Auburn for the same price they could send 5 to OSU.
Oh, yeah.
So it just was a money thing. OSU's not cheap.
When I applied to vet school at Auburn, I was the first alternate, so I wasn't accepted right away. And I think a lot of people applying should realize they're not always taken the first time. But you had an interesting story about one of the relief vets that I've worked for up here.
Oh my
I
gosh.
don't think
Yeah.
she'll mind that story being told,
Yeah.
but I
So
found that very it
yeah.
was one of those times in my life, things happened as I realized they should, and I had to put my trust in, as we've talked about before, a higher power to get everything where it needs to be. And in that story, if you don't mind sharing it, I feel like both you and her are where you need to be. Because
Well, if she ever listens to this, just want to make sure that give a shout out to her and tell her how much I love Jean Pritchard. Yeah, yeah. So I too was the first alternate.
hmm
I was not. I wasn't picked, and and at that time there was a little more leniency to take juniors, and so I was just a junior. But I was the first alternate, and I was kind of disappointed. You're always disappointed, but
Yeah.
you just say, well, okay, I'll finish my degree. And about, gosh, it was midsummer, so it was only like a month or so before, maybe 2 months before um, they started in August. Actually, they started in we were on quarter systems, so we
Okay.
started about the 1st of September. Anyway, uh, I get this call and they said, "Hey, you still want to come to vet school?" I'm going,
Yeah,
"Yes,
of course.
bring it on." And so they sent me a letter. I signed it, sent it back, and I was part of the class of '84. Well, come to find out, the person that was the number one pick to go to OSU that year from Kentucky,
hmm
Dr. Gene Pritchard,
Yeah.
had this terrible horse-related accident and just was really broken up all over the
Yeah.
place and like in traction and weeks in the hospital. And they told her OSU said, look, you're never going to be able to start because you can't walk.
Yeah.
So they said, what we're going to do is we're going to hold your place and we're going to you've got your place. So actually, Jean was the very last Kentucky student to ever go through,
Oh
but
yeah,
she
'cause
went
she
the
did
next
next.
year.
Yeah,
But she just held out a year and went the next year, and they bumped me up, and
yeah.
so from this point on, I'm forever
You're
grateful for
grateful for.
Jean to to have done that, and just yeah, the good Lord drops the good Lord blesses smart people and fools and rains on the just and the unjust. So
It's
I was really fortunate.
yeah,
And I don't see her very often anymore, but of course I'd see her in school a lot. And then a few times I'd go to the OVMA convention
yeah,
and I'd see her at meetings and
yeah.
grovel at her feet.
I've only well, I did some relief for her, and I enjoyed that. But I saw her once at a conference because I rarely saw her because I was
Mhm.
doing relief when she was gone. So
Yeah.
I said, "Hey, Dr. Pritchard," and she's like, "Who are you?" I was like, "I'm the guy that does relief for you."
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but
So
uh,
So, Gene, let me tell you one other thing about Gene. You'll love this. And hopefully, your audience is not, if this is veterinary medicine, hopefully, your audience is not offended too much. But Gene made a product that helped her pay through for vet school.
oh,
And I still have one because I bought two of them. I bought one for my dad and I
hmm
bought one for my uncle up in Indiana. Don't know what happened to my uncle's,
yeah,
but I got my dad's. And so Jean would had this technique of she would go to slaughterhouses.
yeah,
She would buy the bull's appendage,
yes,
the one he breeds with, and she would take that and she had a big long steel rod that would be about the size about the length of a cane.
uh-huh.
And she'd wrap that around that steel rod and then just let it cure, just hard cure.
Oh gosh.
And then on top of that, once it was good and cured and hard, it'd be like it would. It was like a
Yeah.
petrified wood.
Yeah.
And then she would take a big brass hame from a horse harness,
Yeah.
and that was the handle.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
And yeah, and then she would put heavy shellac on it, and it was a beautiful walking stick. And everybody looks at it and they think, "Hey, Nathan," everybody thinks it's that curly maple stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
They think it's the
Did
like a drift piece of driftwood that
yeah,
somebody
Jeff
put
off.
a cane in it.
Did your dad take that to court with him when he
I don't know. Yeah, but it was displayed prominently. It was
as
displayed prominently in our home.
as well it should be. As well it
Yeah,
should be.
but I think she made a gazillion of those things, and it helped her like pay for tuition and stuff like that.
There's that creativity you were
I'm
talking.
telling you, there you go. See, there's all your creativity,
Oh
right?
God. So I know you mostly from, well, I guess all the time I've known you at Morehead State at the tech program, but I know you had private practice before. Where all did you work before going to Morehead? Was it
So
because was it just your practice or did you work for someone else too?
so when I graduated, I my first job after graduation, I worked for a mixed animal practice in Paris, Kentucky for a year. I had met my fiance, my wife now, in when I was in vet school, and so we got married the June after or the September after I graduated, and I worked there for a year, and I just kind of, it was a nice practice and everything, but there was just wanting more. I'm a kind of person. My wife calls me search and destroy. I go and I work really, really hard for 5 or 6 years, and I'm going,
Yeah,
okay,
I
where's
know.
the next hill? Where's the next hill to climb?
Yeah,
And then we're off. And so I worked in that mixed animal practice for a year, but I really loved large animal. I
yeah,
really,
yeah,
really still at the time because I'd worked for this surgeon. I thought I wanted to do surgery, but in vet school, I learned that I'm an okay surgeon, but I'm not that kind of good surgeon.
Yeah.
So it kind of I lost interest in surgery just
Yeah.
because it was not an area that I was, performing at the level that I think I needed. I mean, I can do lots of different surgeries, but there's intricacies in surgeries that I just wasn't
There
grasping.
there are wizards
So
at it
so I
too.
went to so I went to private practice and I just wasn't enjoying it. And all of a sudden, kind of out of the blue, one of my mentors at Ohio State called up and said, "Hey, we're looking for an large animal ambulatory intern."
Hmm.
I'm there.
There, yeah.
So I packed my wife up. We go to Columbus. Of course, it was she was first time she was away from home, so she was miserable. I
Yeah.
was working all the time, loving it, but working all the time.
Yeah.
And she was a physical therapist, so she had a job. And I mean, we see each other passing, and for your second year of marriage, it's probably not a great, wasn't as good a move. But I will tell you what happened there really changed some trajectory for me because I was doing some ambulatory calls, and the guys that were there didn't really like, breeding mares and palpating and
Mhm.
stuff. And they said, "Here's an ultrasound. Here's some bag of sleeves. These are some people that are wanting their mares bred. Go do it."
Knock yourself
And
out.
and they kind of turned me loose. And it clicked.
Yeah.
I loved it. So I really enjoyed all of the reproductive stuff. And after I got done with that, it was just a year-long internship. When I was done with that, I had an option to go work in an equine practice. It was more of a racetrack practice.
Hmm.
They would be like up in New England in the summer and down in
Okay.
Florida in the winter, and they're
Yeah.
back and forth. And after we got to talking, I mean, if I wasn't married and one thing about family and stuff, hey, what a great life, right?
Yeah.
Winter in the in sunny Florida and go up in cool New England in the summer. But the other option that came along was to do a residency.
Hmm.
I did the I matched the theriogenology residency at the University of Tennessee. I was the first theriogenology resident.
Okay.
UT was a pretty young school,
Yeah.
and so I was the first therio resident that they had. And it was a great experience. I was very equine oriented, obviously, but they wanted me to pass that test. They wanted me.
Yeah.
They're going. You're our first resident. You're going to pass that
Yeah.
certifying examination. And so they made sure that I had broad spectrum
Yeah.
species activity. So I did a ton of cattle work. I did a ton of small ruminant work.
Hmm.
I did a lot of probably 60% horse work, but they also, and this was just about the time that people were starting to do some things with small animal reproduction. So on Wednesday mornings, we would have small animal reproductive clinic. And that was like, oh, I don't know. I really don't know if I was like this or not. But it was okay. I learned a
Yeah.
lot,
Yeah.
and it helped me because there were more and more questions on the certifying examination about
Hmm.
small animal repro that it was a good experience. UT was a wonderful place. I loved it.
Yeah.
It was just people were so nice. We love Knoxville. You're in the Smokies. You're
Yeah.
just when you're down there, when you're kind of not from there, then you go to all the regular places and you stand in line for hours to get
Yeah.
into something. Um, when you live down there, you know how to skirt all that.
Yeah.
That, I mean, it's not like the Smoky Mountains don't end at the park. There's no
Exactly.
fence
Yeah.
around
Yeah.
it. So you find little state parks and places like that to go. And it
Right
was just
away. Very nice.
and two of the three of my sons were born there.
Oh.
So it was just an incredibly great experience. I didn't have to work quite as hard as I did in my internship. Had a
Hmm.
little more family time, so that was a little better.
Yeah.
And then after that, I really still always had a hankering to return to Paris, Kentucky.
Yeah.
And now I had this board certification under my belt, and came back up and started a mixed practice. Did did a lot of horse work that the other horse vets didn't want to do
Mm.
because at the time, most equine veterinarians, if they just wanted to be on a thoroughbred farm, palping
Yeah.
mares.
Yeah.
And I took care of the trail riders. I took care of the team pinners. I took care of the, whatever, wasn't being the
Or
draft horses,
pleasure or
the
work.
other, yeah, right. All the other horses that were out there, nobody was really looking at.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that. I was asked to start one of the first heifer development programs that's now still going in Bourbon County.
Oh,
Bourbon County
excellent.
Livestock Improvement. And so I came up with some health requirements. I learned how to do
Yeah.
pelvic measuring and track scoring and ultrasounding of cattle. I ultrasound a lot of mares, but I hadn't really ultrasounded cattle,
Yeah.
and they're a little different. It's a little
They are.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little different. So that I was in Paris for about 10 years. So I did residency, went back home, worked about maybe nine and a half, 10 years.
Hmm.
And then, search and destroy. Um, seeing it, I still love doing the large animal, but I was having to see the itchy dogs and the puking cats and
Hmm.
all those things to pay bills. And so I just kind of got a little itch. I had done some teaching at my residency. I really enjoyed
Yeah.
interaction with students. I had some good students from the local high school come. I had some not so good students come, but the good students, I really enjoyed training them and helping them help mentor them.
Yeah.
And then, I know you and I both know that there is a God and we're not him, and and he does things and
I
when
I've
when you
had
least
to.
expect it.
My plans don't always go as I think they should.
You betcha. You betcha. So how I wound up at Morehead State's the craziest thing. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I called Louise Cook, who's the director of the KVMA, and I said, "Hey," and she and I went to high school together. Louise and I went to high school together. I called her Lulu. I said, "Hey, Lulu, what's going on? Just hey, I'm kind of just kind of itchy to hear in private practice, and I'm having to do it by myself, and I'm running all my own emergencies, and I've been doing this like 14 years now, and if you ever hear of anything that's out there that's, maybe a little different,
Hmm.
I enjoy mentoring and teaching." And she goes, I promise you, I promise you, she says, "Oh my God, oh my gosh," she said, "Morehead State just called today. They're looking for a large animal instructor."
That day, yeah.
That's no lie.
Yeah.
I called them right after that. She said, "Here's the guy's number, Dr. Scott Rundell. Call him."
Hmm.
I called him. I was interviewing with Dr. Rundell, Miss Barb Lewis, and the
Hmm.
department chair of Ag Sciences at Morehead State. I had breakfast with them Saturday morning.
Yeah. And
They called me Monday and said, "When can you start?"
that's a quick turnaround.
I said, "Dude, I got to practice. I got to practice to sell." Now, you haven't sold a practice yet, probably,
Nope.
but I'm telling you, you just, it takes a long time.
It doesn't go.
So I talked to my wife. She says, "Yeah, I'm tired of you working so much.
Yeah.
This is a better life balance thing, and so let's go for it." And so I actually called a realtor, one of these
Yeah.
veterinary related realtors. Guy comes up, does the analysis, all this stuff, puts it on the market. I signed the papers. I got the money. This young man from Memphis area came up, paid cash, and I was out of there in 3 weeks.
That's
There is a God. I
yeah.
am not him, and he works in ways that are unimaginable. Literally. I
Yeah.
mean, I promise you,
Yeah.
I was out of there in 3 weeks. So I
That's
had a month to prepare like lectures. I didn't know anything about PowerPoint or
what.
this kind of stuff. Our computer system at work just spit out rabies reminders and the bills, the
What
bill.
what year did you start at Morehead? Was that
1999.
okay? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
99.
That's it is
So,
amazing how things.
yeah,
One of my favorite, and I see it on a daily basis. I do surgery, and I'm like, I'm not sure what to do here, but I attribute it to all the training that God's put me through. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know how I got through that surgery, but I did, and I knew I would because someone was helping me.
yeah.
But I think my favorite story, Drew McNeil, right? At the
Oh, yeah, I know Drew really well.
when
Yeah.
his he first came, and I went out the chancel band with them, and this involves you, so you're going to be drawn into this.
Yeah.
We did testimonials at the different churches we went to. Well, he
Mhm.
took us to the Moorhead Church, and it's his first time there, so he's trying to make a good impression. I say, I'll give a testimonial.
Mhm.
And he had no idea what was coming because I said, I prayed one morning. I'm like, I'm pretty cold. I'm out here working with Dr. Prater, and I'm just shivering and cold. And so the Moorhead congregation is listening very aptly and everything. And I say, all of a sudden, I wasn't cold anymore. I had my hand up the rear end of a cow. God provided to me. And I could see Drew's face just
Yeah, just
drop. He
the
was
blood drained out.
he was just like, "What?" And everyone at the a lot of them had they got a kick out of the story. Everyone enjoyed it, but I just enjoyed the look on his face when he
Yeah.
had. I have no idea where this is going, but th those little things make a big difference in my and always have from then on. Um,
Well,
you should next time
uh,
you see Drew, ask him if he remembers that.
yeah, yeah. Well, Drew, I've been very blessed. Drew's called on me numerous times to come over and do some give some messages and stuff like that. And it's just always the greatest blessing. Just
Yeah.
really, it's the greatest thing I do. I've had so many wonderful things happen to me at the time, in my time at MSU, but and given speeches and had nice awards and all this kind of stuff. But I'm telling you, the highlight of all those 26 years is whenever I get to share what God's done in my life and how His grace is. Because look, I'm a veterinarian,
Hmm.
okay? I chose that profession. The teaching thing, that's totally on Him.
Yeah.
That's totally on God. Nobody taught me to teach. I
Yeah.
don't know how to teach.
Yeah.
I think you like my classes,
Yeah.
but I don't know how. All I kept getting internally was, you love this profession, share it with these students, and do it in a way that's relevant to them. And that all came from God. I
It,
had no idea how to. I don't know how to teach.
it,
I'm one of the only people in academia that probably has no background. That the first day I was at Morehead State, they were talking about this thing called pedagogy. I thought it was a disease. I thought it was like something that children got, like
yeah. I
in the
missed that in the
Amazon.
books. What was it?
Yeah, and pedagogy is like your style. They go,
Yeah.
"Oh, Phil, what's your pedagogy?" And I'm going, "I don't think I have one."
Last time I checked, I was clear.
I took I took some penicillin, and I got rid of it. So I just I didn't know. And it's, pedagogy is your teaching methodology.
Yes. Yes.
How do you prepare and all this kind of stuff. So I learned, I mean, I was on the fly learning,
Hmm.
and I'll tell you, Nathan, this is awful to say. And I hope all your audience will understand this. Hopefully, my students would understand this. But I'm going to tell you something. I spent a lot of time at Morehead State flying by the seat of my pants.
Mm.
Just, and everybody around me is scheduled and they're detailed and they're method
Yeah.
oriented, and we do this and we do this at this time and we go from here to there, a point A
Yeah.
to point B like this, we can't do it any other way. It has to be
Yeah.
done. And I was going, dude, I've spent the last 15 years not having a schedule. I didn't know what a schedule was.
You got
I knew a
cases
schedule
coming in.
was Miss Jones was supposed to come in at 8:15, but Joe down the road called me at 7:30 with the cow calving.
Yeah.
So there, you know what the schedule is? Just out the door.
Yeah.
I have no schedule now. The rest of the day is there's no schedule.
Yeah.
Just come to bring it in. We'll look at
We'll
it
get
or
it done
hang on or
sometime.
reschedule or so.
I'd like,
My veterinary career up to that point had taught me you go on the fly, man.
yeah.
You see whatever comes in the door, you study it. You got a relatively small window of time to study what
Mm,
you need to study about it, make a decision, make your best. In some cases, you don't have to guess. You got the diagnosis. Uh, but how often do we go in and we go, could be this, could be this, could be this, and we treat symptomatically? I
mhm.
mean, I've done nothing for the first 15 years of my life other than live flying
Figure
by
it
the
out.
seat of my pants.
Yeah.
And now I'm just all of a sudden the brakes hit, and I'm now supposed to be this scheduled
Mhm.
methodology, pedagogical, stuff. And I'm going, oh my God. So, I thank God really too for Dr. Rendell and Miss Lewis and Dr. DeMoss because they all kind of figured pretty quickly that I was not the poster child for academia. And, I come into the committee meeting with green ring around my arm, my left armpit for cow crap. And,
I'm ready to talk. Hope I don't smell
yeah,
too bad.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
So they understood that and they gave me a long leash.
yeah.
They gave me a lot of latitude in how I did things. And I will tell you, they have basically allowed me to bring all that experience
Yeah.
that I had into the classroom.
And
And
and I
if there's any reason that I have any success at teaching, I think, besides just God's grace, is I had a ton of experience and I learned how to bring that into the classroom.
yeah. I think I walked away from your lectures with two things. One, you helped me focus on what is important. You showed us everything,
Right,
but there's a lot of information out there, and at a certain point, you have to focus on certain things to get through an appointment,
right,
get through a day.
right.
The other thing, as going into college, it's the first time you go out, how am I interacting with the world? And I remember various conversations with you, especially how do I walk as a Christian? And I think from there I was like, I want people to know I am without me having to preach it. And
Right.
I've taken that from a long time
Yeah.
and tried to model that. So, but that's also how I interact with patients and other things. So to me, two very important lessons that I don't think you ever sat down and said this stuff, but it was something that I watched and learned. And I,
You
I
know,
appreciate that.
yeah. Well, thank you for saying that. That makes me feel good that came across. Obviously you work at a secular university. You can't really just, you know, take your Bible and get up in front and
Yeah,
start thumping the podium. But there were always ways that I made sure that
mm,
my students knew where I stood.
yeah, yeah,
You had no doubt. Hey, Dr. P, can we have this meeting on Wednesday night? No, I go to church on Wednesday night.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Um, uh, how do I know there's a God? Because he made a rumen, you know.
yeah,
So cow eats kudzu and makes
yeah,
T-bone steak.
yeah,
That doesn't
yeah,
that's got design behind it.
yeah,
So, little things that I would do to let you know where I stood.
yeah.
I don't ever feel like I ever had any, where I wasn't proselytizing anybody,
No, never.
thing like that. You just knew this is what Dr. P thought.
Yeah,
And this is how he, dealt with certain things.
yeah,
Um, so just from a personal standpoint, now that I'm not in this secular university and I'm on
yeah,
your podcast, I don't know how you can be a veterinarian and not believe
Yeah.
because you see it. The book of Romans, Paul says in Romans, how do we know about the invisible God? Well, because we see his creation. Well, it's
Yeah.
all in front of and what more what stronger evidence do we have of his incredible creative powers than animals?
And
Dude, you
watching
know,
them heal and
why do you why
interact.
do you yeah, why do I still after watching it 400 times, why do I still, when I see a video of Secretariat in the
Yeah.
Belmont coming down 33 links, why do I still just have to fight back the tears?
It's
Because you see his creation
yeah.
like this perfect creation, and you go, yeah, you know, I understand that there are people that maybe their belief system has been injured over
Mhm.
the years. Nobody's better at injuring people than Christians sometimes.
I
So, you know,
definitely seen that too.
I mean, you really think about it. I mean, you probably a lot of folks that are, unbelievers are like, well, this is what happened in church.
Yeah.
So, I think that happens, but I tell you, there's no way I can look at all the wonderful things that happen in his creation
Hmm.
and not know there's a design behind it
Yeah.
because I see them every day. I see those animals every day. I see their insides. You
Yeah.
see their insides. You see how things are all put together, and it's not a happenstance type thing.
There's a lot of
So
things I question in the world, but I just I don't know how I can question that there's not a God or because I
right,
see
right,
you know.
right. So that was a great, so that was always a wonderful thing. And honestly, over the years, I absolutely had students that would come to me and uh, and ask for prayer because they knew I'd pray with them.
Yeah.
And I had faculty members come and we pray, when they were having issues. And
Yeah.
I had strong prayer partners there. The Joe Fraley, our farm manager, he and I would just sometimes we'd just be in a mess at the farm, and even though it wasn't the Ukraine war or
Yeah. Yeah.
Gaza or one of those things, it was
Yeah.
still a problem. It's
Yeah.
still a problem in front of us, and
Yeah.
and you absolutely come in. We'd sit there and
Yeah.
pray about the
I
situation.
sometimes forget, but I try before every surgery, just a quick keep
Yeah,
keep this
yeah,
under control for me. Uh,
right, right,
and usually when I'm not doing that is when things get more out of control.
yeah.
Um,
God tells us that He would give us wisdom, and He gives it to us abundantly, and without any like we don't have to feel bad about asking Him for it.
yeah.
And there were times where I'd be going into some academic meeting with a bunch of academics who don't necessarily think, they believe their wisdom is best. They believe their knowledge is superior and all those kind of things. And I would literally driving from the farm downtown, I go, look, Lord, I need some godly wisdom here going into this thing.
Hmm.
This is, somebody's trying to do something here that's really going to it's not the best for students. It's not the best for, what we're trying to do. And they think they've got some idea. I said, I need some godly wisdom. I need for you to be there and
Hmm.
change the trajectory of this
Yeah.
and give me some words, but I need it from you, not my own,
Yeah.
not my own understanding. And he invariably made that happen.
I
I mean,
sometimes
just
wonder that I did not get a because I have a brick and mortar now, I still do ambulatory, but that I needed more time as ambulatory, so I had the farm call,
yeah.
the road trips to pray and get myself ready for whatever was next. It's
Yeah, windshield time is not good for your pocketbook, but it's good for your soul.
yes, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
I'll say my students like that the best too because and that's something with the LMU students I almost feel bad about. With less farm calls, that is when I could talk to them, and we
Yeah,
had time to, because I would usually, okay, we're going out to this. What do you know? Here's the quiz. But we usually would talk about other things. Okay, what are you planning on doing in your career, in your life? And I think they got a lot out of that. I feel a little bad because in the clinic, I'm like, hey, you've got to do this, and we've got another appointment coming.
yeah.
It's a little different approach.
The cab of the vet truck is a great classroom,
Yes, I
wonderful classroom.
and at
I,
Auburn,
I loved my internship was in ambulatory, and I would always have 3 or 4 students with me on calls, and it was a wonderful time. I loved every minute of it.
I will say I did get a little worried from time to time with some of my ambulatory professors because I needed them to focus a little bit more on the road.
Yeah,
But other
yeah,
than that, I think
yeah.
they
A
did
little
okay.
dangerous.
We didn't need those side view mirrors there or anything.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening today. We're going to take a break and come back next time for the second part of our discussion with Dr. P, where we're going to talk about the underlying stresses in veterinary medicine, changes he has seen in the veterinary field, and, of course, more Dr. P stories. Again, a big thank you to Dr. Prater for taking this time to share his thoughts with us. I know these discussions have helped me gain perspective on the world and my life, and I'm sure they will do the same for you. Please join us again next time. I'm Dr. Nathan. Thanks for listening. I hope our discussions are valuable to you and aid in giving perspective. If you want to contact us, please reach out to theveterinarypodcast@gmail.com. You can find a complete list of the podcast episodes on SoundCloud. If you find this information helpful and want more content, please join our Patreon, patreon.com/theveterinarypodcast. And don't forget to follow our Facebook page, facebook.com/theveterinarypodcast. As always, thanks for listening, and I hope this information is helpful to you. If you do find it helpful, please like it, share it, so other people may find it helpful as well.